In a section of the New Testament's Gospel of Matthew, Jesus asks his disciples the following question: "Who do you think I am?" This question, for some researchers, remains unanswered even today. These researchers have been searching for traces of something for years. They will examine the data obtained in this research process, which has roots reaching almost 2,000 years into the past, looking for traces of Jesus in historical records or archaeological findings. So where should we start? The first thing we need to do is determine whether the Holy Scripture of Christians provides us with clues about this research. The Holy Scripture of Christians, the Bible, is divided into two parts: the Old Testament and the New Testament. The former is more related to Jewish faith and history. In this section, it is not possible to find anything about Jesus' life. In fact, to obtain information on this topic, we need to look at the second part of the book, the New Testament. The New Testament is also divided into different sections. For example, the Gospels, Acts of the Apostles, and Paul's letters are some of these sections. Among these contents, the earliest in terms of writing date are the letters of Paul, written approximately 20 years after the year AD 33, which is traditionally accepted as the date when Jesus was crucified, or, in other words, ascended to heaven. However, Paul's letters do not provide much information about Jesus' life. These letters were sent to some important cities of the time to spread the teachings of Christianity and mainly provide information about what Christianity is. The Gospels, which talk about Jesus' life and miracles, were written at later dates. For example, it is thought that the Gospel of Mark was written between AD 66 to 70, Matthew's Gospel around 70, Luke's Gospel between AD 80 to 90, and the Gospel of John around AD 90. So, does the fact that the Gospels were written years after Jesus' death overshadow their historical significance? Honestly, in such cases, historians try to evaluate the nature of historical losses. In the introductory section of the Gospel of Luke, it is explicitly stated that what will be narrated in the book is transmitted from other witnesses who lived in those days. This is a method applied by many historians. For example, the historical records we will discuss shortly were written years after Jesus' death. What makes these works historically reliable is whether the transmitted information is consistent. At this very point, some historians argue that some information provided in the Gospels does not match with other historical records, and thus these books should be approached with skepticism from a historical perspective. Let's try to explain this situation with an example. In the Gospel of Luke, it is written that during the reign of King Herod of Judea and when Quirinius was the governor of Syria, Caesar Augustus ordered a census throughout the empire. However, there is no historical record of such a large-scale census. Moreover, the consensus among other sources and Roman records that Quirinius was the governor of Syria in AD 6 and King Herod died in AD 4 make it impossible for such an event to take place. In this regard, researchers argue that when it comes to historical records, the Gospels should be considered as historical works rather than historical evidence. So, are there any other sources from which we can gain historical information about Jesus? Of course, there are. However, their number and the information they provide about Jesus are quite limited. Let's start analyzing them now. All historical records related to Jesus were written after his crucifixion. However, some are relatively closer in time than others. At this point, 3 historians stand out within the first 100 years after AD 33, the date of Jesus' crucifixion. One of them is the Roman historian Suetonius, who wrote in AD 121 in his work, The Lives of the 12 Caesars. Suetonius mentions that Emperor Claudius expelled the Jews from Rome because of the disturbances caused by a certain Chrestus, continuously inciting them. However, this is the extent of what Suetonius provides. Yet, some researchers have emphasized the similarity between the Latin word Christus, meaning Messiah, and Chrestus. Another source mentioning Jesus is the book of a Roman historian, Tacitus. Tacitus, in a section related to the Great Fire of Rome in AD 64, mentions that Emperor Nero blamed and punished Christians, accusing them of causing the fire. However, Tacitus's information is not limited to this. While narrating this issue, he also talks about a person he describes as the leader of these Christians, Christus. According to Tacitus, Pontius Pilate, who served as a prosecutor in Judea, arrested this person named Christus and subjected him to a gruesome punishment. However, Tacitus does not provide much information about Jesus, and there are historical inconsistencies in the information he gives. Pilate was not a prosecutor but the governor of Judea during that time. Another historical record mentioning Jesus is the work of the Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, titled Jewish Antiquities. Josephus stands out as the historian who provides the most detailed information about Jesus during that period. For example, there is a section in Jewish Antiquities that goes, "At that time there was a wise man named Jesus. Indeed, calling him a man might be appropriate, for he performed extraordinary deeds and was a teacher of those who accept the truth with pleasure. Many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. He was the Christ who worked wonders, and when Pilate, on the advice of our leaders, condemned him to the cross, those who had loved him did not abandon him." These three works are the limited records providing historical information about Jesus. However, there are other areas we need to look into to trace Jesus historically. One of these areas is archaeological studies conducted in the region of Palestine. Actually, finding an archaeological artifact directly related to Jesus is not possible. Archaeological remains generally provide information about cultures, lifestyles, and daily habits of societies rather than individuals. However, researchers interested in this topic try to prove the geographical accuracy of the Gospels by focusing on the archaeological accuracy of the Bible, rather than finding information about Jesus himself. For example, according to the Gospel of John, there was a pool with 5 porticos called Bethesda. Through a series of excavations conducted in the 19th century, a structure similar to this was unearthed in the region of Palestine. Other excavation works are also available. However, researchers argue that these studies only prove the geographical accuracy of the Gospels and do not present historical evidence about Jesus. These objects are called holy relics. However, the relevance of holy relics to the individuals they claim to be associated with is a highly debated issue. This is because the display of holy relics in churches, often for donation or money received underneath, has turned this into a lucrative trade over time. Especially during the Middle Ages, numerous people emerged searching for these holy relics. For example, fragments believed to be open parts of Jesus' crucifixion were found everywhere Christians believed. As one of the pioneers of the Reformation, John Calvin expressed, "If all the fragments found could be put together, it would be possible to fill a cargo ship." However, according to the Bible, this cross could be carried by only one man. In those years, thousands, even millions, of holy relics believed to belong to Jesus, apostles, or saints emerged. Many Christians living in those years might have believed that these were true. Still, today technology is much more advanced, and scientists can approximately calculate the dates of these holy relics using the carbon-14 method. So, which holy relics believed to belong to Jesus are from the 1st century AD. For example, the spear of Longinus, which is believed to have pierced Jesus' side and is now exhibited in the Hofburg Imperial Palace, dates back to the 9th century. The Holy Grail, believed to have been used by Jesus at the Last Supper and now displayed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was produced in the 6th century. And the Shroud of Turin, in which Jesus' body is believed to have been wrapped after being taken down from the cross, dates back to the 13th century. In addition, there are some pieces dating back to the 1st century AD. For instance, the crown of thorns in Notre Dame Cathedral and the Holy Nail exhibited in the cathedral in Troyes were produced in the 1st century AD. Still, researchers debate whether these can truly be associated with Jesus.